A Silent Voice is an amazing movie. To me, the film reaches a real feeling through animation, not just on its themes, but how it tackles those themes. Bullying is a serious issue, especially to those with disabilities, and in media, it must be taken seriously if an effective message about bullying is to get across. This makes the first 30 minutes of this film particularly hard to watch. What I find interesting is that the reactions of the characters to the constant bullying of Shoko. None of them ever stop it. In fact, our elementary school portion of the movie is told through the eyes of the worst offender of this harassment, Shoya Ishida. Sahara is nice to Shoko, but doesn't stop the bullying. Other people will laugh along with it and occasionally say something was too far. Meanwhile, the teacher is aware, and while he tries to stop Ishida to an extent, he doesn't try hard enough. I'll now be transitioning into spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen the movie, watch it. Warning, we will be discussing topics such as suicide and long term effects of bullying on children as this video goes on. What I really appreciate about this film, while focusing primarily on Ishida, it doesn't limit the focus on Shoko and on her little sister Yuzuru. Shoko is a character that is filled with humanity, so is Yuzuru. Shoko has difficulty speaking due to her inability in hearing. She tries to talk because she thinks hearing is the problem. And while yes, it is true she would like to have hearing like everyone else, and she is justified to have that right for that want, she herself is not the problem. Her lack of hearing was made a problem by the people around her because they couldn't accept something out of the normal for them. But because of the way people constantly treat her, she thinks she has to be sorry for being born deaf, which is simply not true. She has nothing to apologize for. Meanwhile, Ishida has to contend with that he is responsible for his state. He pushed people away in high school, and he has to confront that he is the one who bullied Shoko the worst. He can try to understand why, but powerfully, he doesn't condone it. Ueno, another bully from those years, tries to free herself of any guilt, and puts the blame on Shoko herself for tearing apart the group, while Ashida accepts that he was the one who was wrong, which creates an interesting story because he always knew it. He knew he was the one who was wrong. He doesn't figure that out as the story progresses. No, he needs to figure out what to do knowing he is the person who treated her the worst. By facing this issue directly, he is able to work through it more directly. But he can't just expect things to just work out immediately because he just started being nice. All the hurt is still there. The distrust made isn't going to fade away just like that. It's a long and difficult process that he needs to face with conviction. Often, acts of fearlessness in battle or whatnot is described as the peak of human condition. It is meant to be inspirational because there might be one big day that calls upon us to go through with a big act fearlessly. However, how much good is that if we can't be good in the everyday mundane situation? We have a lot of fear in social interactions, and it can be especially hard to step up for yourself and especially for someone else. It can be thought out of, one can believe that they can't help or shouldn't step in the way. What this leads to, well, it's what happens to Shoko throughout the movie. It seems easier to stay out of these issues. It can feel easier to ignore the pain being caused, but it is all still there. This movie so perfectly encapsulates how life gets complicated and things don't go right, and you had a role to play in all of it. Well, one is subject to develop anger, and they may take out their anger on the wrong people, but no one in this movie is an unforgivable monster like they may think of themselves or each other sometimes as. Ueno is confused. She genuinely cares about Ishida. She's young too. Figuring out how to deal with jealousy and pain is difficult. All the characters need to figure these things out. Ueno needed to give up on her feud. She tries to create an agreement with Shoko for them to just agree to silently hate each other. But that agreement will never work. Shoko doesn't hold on to grudges like that, and Ueno isn't the one to stay silent on things she dislikes. Shoko disagrees. Towards the end, Ueno starts fighting Shoko because she sees her as responsible for Ishida's hospitalization because Shoko attempted suicide and was saved by him. This scene to me shows why the characters need to stop fighting. Shoka's mom shows up and starts fighting Ueno, and then Ishida's mom steps in to stop this fighting. Through no words, we understand that all this fighting was useless and it left everyone hurt. But when they stopped fighting, you can start to heal. Not to mention, too, both Shoko and Ueno like being with Ishida. they have to start getting along if they still want him in their lives. Though this healing is going to take a lot more than one conversation. Every day, Ueno leaves the hospital after the fight. She sees Shoko and ignores her until one rainy day she leaves without an umbrella. Shoko follows her and covers her with her umbrella. The umbrella in the rain is a consistent piece of imagery in this movie, showing that sometimes you step out into the world unprepared, but other people can help you. What I like at the end is how excited Shoko is when Ueno calls her an idiot in sign language, because for the first time, Ueno is trying to communicate to her in the way Shoko can most effectively communicate. Ueno gets uncomfortable and leaves. It's a humorous and effective way to show how the relationship has progressed. I really appreciate this movie on its nuance and subtlety. A lot of times it seems to me animated films receive praise for having the most animation, but I argue that a film like this deserves just as much praise for its attention to detail and brilliantly written and animated characters. A scene where we see Ishida contemplate whether or not if he's going to stop Nagatsuka from getting his bike stolen is amazing. We see his expression change as he walks by, considering action and then feeling awkward to ignoring it, then finally stepping up awkwardly and diffusing the situation by offering his bike instead. It's more impactful to me than any action scene, but nothing against you if you feel the opposite. The film lives and thrives in subtlety. It has room for strong emotion as well. Ishida's mother's reaction to Ishida's attempted suicide the day previous lures you in by making you think she is oddly chill about this, and then she begins pleading with him to never try it again and threatens to burn all his money. Ishida gave all his money to her in an envelope the night previous, thinking it was going to be his last night. When they all come down, she still ends up accidentally burning it. But Ishida decides he can make it again. Another aspect of this movie I really appreciate is Yuzuru. Yuzuru is defensive of her sister because she is afraid of what Shoko could do to herself. Yuzuru is a photographer, and throughout the film, they photograph dead animals. It isn't until later that it is revealed they do this because they believe these images of death will prevent Shoko from attempting suicide. I like how Yuzuru isn't treated like an idiot because they don't go to school. Yuzuru's grandmother sums it up perfectly to them. I have two amazing grandchildren. Yuzuru has a talent in photography and a good heart. There's nothing wrong with them. They just have a difficult life to navigate. One of the things this film tries to convey that despite difficult life and feelings of regret and feelings that you just aren't good enough for people, as Ishida puts it, I don't think it's worth dying for. It's a powerful quote from someone who previously thought that it was. Through forgiveness, he found it didn't have to be that bad. On top of that, though, having life is a right to live. Something that isn't just words, but that it is worth it to be alive. If you can be good to yourself and others, and if everyone did that, we would be in a much better state. But the film knows it's more complicated than that. Ishida makes a promise that he will look at people's faces again the following day, but it takes way longer than that. And Shoko tells him that it is okay to look at the floor. In the end, he decides to look at the faces of other people, but it was his decision, and he made it when he was ready to. This film has an amazing soundtrack and beautiful animation, but I'd like to mention one last scene. It is towards the beginning of the film, but it puts the whole movie together. Ishida just made friends with Nagatsuka, and he can't help but wonder why he deserves to have friends. What makes one worthy of friendship? Nagatsuka stops him and tells him those questions aren't really to be asked because friendship goes beyond words. It can't be described or justified in words, but we have it. The movie shows us that what we say is not the end of who we are. There is so much more to us than the words we speak. Words aren't always needed. We'll end here with a quote from Hayao Miyazaki. We tend to think that unless we can explain everything in words, we cannot rationalize things.